I. All right, I remembered to hit record. Thank you all for those of you attending, and thank you for those of you who are watching the recording. I know there's never going to be a time that works for everyone, so I appreciate that. I mean, that's why I create the recording, right? So that anyone who wants to watch it, who doesn't have time at this time, can still watch the recording. Here we go. How to create content Google loves. Um, see, there's Marie Herman. I'm actually going to stop sharing because I wanted to do something a little different. Um, there we go. Where is it? Huh. And there's Peter Stein. Weird. Oh, because it's in a different folder. That's why. Sorry, everyone. Just taking me a minute to find. There we go. Ta-da! And now I'm in my little box. And I'm gonna go ahead and let Peter in. Hello to Marie, and Sarah's here. Awesome. Always gotta wait. For those of you who are just joining, thank you for joining us, Sarah. It's so good to see you, kind of, sort of in person. Not really. Hello. It's been a while since I've seen you in person. Welcome to those of you who are here, those of you watching the recording. This is how to create content Google loves getting in front of prospects when they are looking for you, because that is so much easier to convert leads if they're actually looking for what it is that you're providing, rather than telling someone what you do and they go, huh? What does that mean? I know I get that a lot when I talk about content marketing, and then I have to explain what content marketing is, and people go, oh, I need you. So we are going to talk about how to create content Google loves. And I do want to start by figuring out how to move to the next slide. There we go. Why Google? Why should you care? First of all, when we talk about SEO, for those of you who don't know the lingo, SEO stands for search engine optimization. Google is not the only search engine out there, but it does have like 90-something% of the market of online search engines. So when most of us talk about SEO, we're talking about Google. That's why. So why should you care whether or not Google likes your content? It's because 95% of buyers are using search engines like Google to look for small businesses like yours, especially in this day and age. A lot of people think that SEO is for big companies with big budgets. That is not the case. It is a great way for small companies to really be competitive in the marketplace. So again, getting in front of people when they're looking for you, so much easier. That's my next point. SEO gives you a chance to get in front of people when they're looking for you. For most of us, our first stop is Google, right? If we have a question about something, if we want to know what something is, or if we should bother buying something, our first stop for most of us is going to be Google. Same for your customers. If they are looking for information on your product or service, chances are the first thing they're going to do is look it up on Google. So if you are not creating content that is getting you in front of them in those searches, you're losing out on a lot of opportunities there. Gives you a chance to position yourself as an authority in your industry and build trust with your audience. A lot of times just showing up on that first page of Google builds a lot of trust, because Google has worked so hard in that vetting process to give people the content that is highest quality and most relevant to them. So a lot of people trust Google and trust the results that they get when they are searching for something. So they go, well, if this person is ranking on the first page of Google for this search term, that I just put in, then they probably really know their stuff. It's a great way to, again, get in front of people, get that buy-in. And again, because leads are looking for you when they conduct a search, they tend to be high quality leads, right? I can talk to a lot of people at a lot of different networking events. Some of them are going to be high quality leads. Some of them won't have any idea what I'm talking about, won't have any desire for what I'm doing. But if they are actively looking for solutions about blogging, about content marketing, about SEO, then that's a really good lead for me. So that's another reason to make sure you're spending more time with those high quality leads, is by optimizing your content so you can show up when people are actually looking for you. So before we get into the who, what, where, when, how, why, let's talk about who I am and why you should care about anything that I have to say. So I always wanted to be a writer. When I was growing up, was told that writers don't make any money and I should choose a more practical career. So I figured I would work in publishing, because if I couldn't make a living writing books, maybe I could make a living making books. Well, I graduated in 2009, right after the job market crashed. So there were no jobs to be had in publishing or really anywhere else. I did manage to major in English and psychology, which turned out to be the perfect degree for what I'm doing now. Had no clue this was an option. Like I said, thought I wanted to work in publishing. That didn't happen, which turned out to be a good thing if you know what happened to the publishing industry after 2009. So I ended up answering phones. It was a job, it was not a career. Ended up between jobs at one point. My roommate at the time, her dad, who was an attorney, was awesome and offered to give me stuff to do around his office until I got back on my feet. And one of the things he needed was someone to write blog posts for his law firm. And he knew that I had a strong writing background, so he offered me the gig. And I was like, what? I can get paid to write? Seriously? Yeah, sign me up. So I jumped at that chance, started writing for him, and then an associate of his, and then for some friends of mine. It just kept growing from there. And actually, after 6 months, that client of mine, that very first client, told me that I had brought in $75,000 worth of business to his law firm just through the blog post that I was writing for him. Suffice to say, he was not paying me $75,000 for 6 months of blog posts. So he definitely got a nice return on that investment. But it was a combination of factors, but a lot of it was people go online to look for answers to these questions that they have. In his case, it was about employment law. And if they find someone who can explain it to them in real world terms, in terms they can understand, not in legalese, not in the Latin that the lawyers love, but terms that the average person can understand, and make it really accessible and explain it to them how it works, why it's important, steps they can do to protect themselves, and then a way to reach out, right? That call to action is super important. So that was my first clue that there was actually money to be made in this, and a way to make a living by creating content. When it comes to creating content for Google, that was not something that I was really thinking about initially. I was really just a freelance writer, but the more I did blogging professionally, the more I realized that you really can't do that without SEO, and vice versa. They're just too intertwined for you to have one without the other. And for me, it started, someone took a screenshot, did some keyword research for me super quick, and just took a screenshot of it and sent me that screenshot. And I was fascinated. I was like, wait, people are looking for this word, but not this word. And more people are looking for this word, even though it means basically the same thing as this other phrase or word. Totally fascinated. And that was it. I was down the SEO rabbit hole, never found my way back out. So that is something that I am constantly working on now, is making sure that the content that I create for myself and for my clients is really Google friendly. And there are a lot of ways to do that. So let's get into it. So first and foremost is keywords. I do have a whole other presentation on keywords, so I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds on keyword research here. I will just say that obviously it's super important. At the end of the day, Google is still you're still either typing a phrase, as shown in here, you're either typing a phrase into Google's search bar and Google's giving you results. Or these days with all these virtual home devices, a lot of people are speaking what they want into their Google home device or into their phone to find the information they need. Same basic principle, right? Google takes the words from the search term that you're using and puts it in, matches it with words in the content, and all the content that's out there on the internet. So it is looking for content that has those same words, because there's a lot more to SEO than that, but that's the start of it, right? Google wants to make sure that you are relevant to this search that people are making. So that all comes down to keywords. And again, if people are looking for you and the product or service you provide, you have to know what it is they're looking for so that you can answer those questions. I always find keyword research to be super enlightening, not only as far as what words I should be using in my content, but what questions are people asking about content marketing that I can answer in my content. And then I can use those keywords in my content in a natural way. So use the right keywords and then put the keywords in the right places. There we go. Keyword placement. You want it in your title. You want it in your URL. That's the thing that goes in the bar at the top. That is the address, if you will, of that particular page or post. It will be, www.mywebsite.com/ keyword placement, SEO webinar, content marketing, whatever that keyword is. You want to make sure it's in the URL, because Google is going to look at these things before it looks at anything else. Meta description is a little squirrely. So traditionally, and I'm not going to tell you that meta description is obsolete yet, but it might be becoming obsolete. So the meta description, if you use a WordPress website, it's super easy. There's a box that says meta description, usually off to the side of each page or post, and you get to write a little description in there of what this is about. Longer than your title, but not long enough to be a full paragraph, right? It's just a few lines, real quick description of what this is about. You want your keywords in there. The meta description is what's going to show up underneath your headline in Google. So when people search something, if your website shows up, they're going to see your title, and that's the link. And then underneath it, they're going to see the meta description. Now, Google has started ignoring the meta description and pulling out whatever content from your website they think is most relevant to that search, and they put it underneath your headline in those searches. They're not doing this across the board. They've kind of started rolling this out. Not super accurate, right? Sometimes they get it right. Sometimes they get it wrong. They're using AI to do this. So it's always a little touch and go with that. So there is a possibility that having your own meta description that you're creating might become obsolete in the near future if Google continues in that direction. So that's just something to be aware of. I am still writing meta descriptions and including keywords for all my content for now, but just a heads up there. Subheadings, right? You've got your title, and then if it's a long post, especially if it's longer than 300, 400 words, you want to break it up with subheadings. That makes it easier for your humans to read, because they don't have this giant block of text to look at. They can skim through the subheadings, find the information that's most relevant to them, get an idea of what the content is all about, makes it super accessible for them. And again, Google looks at your subheadings throughout before it looks at the rest of your content. And then last but not least, you want to make sure you have your keywords throughout your content. Don't put it everywhere in your content. There's kind of a fine line between making sure it's in your content frequently enough that Google believes this is what you're about versus keyword stuffing. Keyword stuffing is when you have something like, you really need to make sure that your keyword placement is up to date, because keyword placement is super important because keyword placement, right? That's when you have one word or phrase that's just stuffed into your content as many times as you can, regardless of whether or not it's relevant. It's crappy content. Obviously, no one actually wants to read that. That strategy used to work back in the day to get people to your website. Google would rank that content, and then Google got wise and stopped ranking that content. So that can actually backfire now if you do that. So you want to get it in there frequently enough that Google knows what you're all about, but not so much that you are risking that keyword stuffing. One way to get around that is looking up the related keywords. Right? So you've got, for example, this is a webinar about content creation. You can talk about blogging. You can talk about content marketing. You can talk about all these different things that are related to what I'm talking about here, and they're all different keywords. So you can target all of those different keywords throughout your content. So that way you're keeping it fresh, but also optimizing for Google. How long should my blog post be? I get this question all the time. The minimum is 500 words. I don't think there's a maximum. I have seen experts say that they never write a blog post less than 2,000 words. Some even say they'd never go shorter than 3,000 words. I don't think you need to do that. Don't freak out thinking that all of your content needs to be that long. It does not. I know that I tend to switch it up. A lot of websites switch it up. They have shorter posts, they have longer posts. Definitely no shorter than 500 words because that is the minimum that Google likes. But once you get past that 500 word point, it's really more about the keyword and making sure that you're covering everything there is to cover on that topic. So don't arbitrarily stuff your content with a whole bunch of words just to reach an arbitrary word count. That's not good content, not going to be effective. Don't do that. What you do want to make sure of is that you are covering everything there is to cover on that topic. So if you've said all there is to say and it's 750 words, great. That's 750 word blog post. You can go ahead and publish. One thing I would recommend is doing a little bit of research, whatever your target keyword is, put that search term into Google, see what comes up, if there's other content that comes up, and if there is, how long is that content? Are other people writing 700, 800 word blog posts? Are they writing 1,500 word blog posts? Where are they ending up? Because if it's ranking on the first page of Google for that keyword and it's only, 600 words, then you only need to write 600 words. But if people are writing longer content, then you will also need to write longer content in order to make sure that you are competitive for that keyword. Again, making sure that you are covering everything there is to cover on a topic is also a great way to make sure that you rank for that keyword. Again, not to the point of reaching an arbitrary word count, but just saying this is everything there is to cover on this topic. That's what we call an ultimate guide style post, right? Because it is the ultimate guide. It is everything you need to know on this topic right here in this blog post. Great way to get all your keywords in there, again, without keyword stuffing. Great way to get a bunch of different related keywords in there because you're covering subtopics on this larger topic. And then for the people who find your content, it's going to answer all of their questions. If they have something specific they want answered, they will find it on your blog post because you have covered everything there is to cover. Whereas if you only cover part of it, then if they don't find what they need on your content, they're going to look somewhere else. Same with Google, right? So Google is going to see that if someone is looking for something really specific, if Google doesn't see that really specific keyword in your content, it's not going to rank for that particular search. So having as much content in there as you can while making sure it's still high quality content is the way to go. List it out. Okay. This one, so Google loves lists. People love lists because it makes it really easy to read. So 10 tips to make your content Google friendly, 7 reasons you should care about Google's algorithm, 5 ways to attract, engage, and convert more high quality leads, right? There's a reason that you see all these numbers and all these clickbait titles and headlines, right? It's because it works. It's because people click on those headlines. So I'm not saying you have to make it a list every single time. Obviously do so if it makes sense to do so. But again, this will help with making sure that you have those subheadings because every tip, every reason, every way to do XYZ, right, is all going to be, each one is going to be a subheading. I'm trying to figure out if I should talk about this now or later. I'll talk about this I'll talk about it now. So listing it out, this used to be, and it still is to an extent, super helpful because Google likes, when you see that block of text, there's always going to be one search that or one link page or post that ranks for each keyword, like right at the top, and Google gives you a big block of text. It's not just a snippet, it's like a big block of text. And sometimes you can get the information you need just by looking at that block of text without even clicking through to the website. I'm blanking on the name of what that's called. It'll come to me as soon as I end this webinar. So it's that big block of text is a great way to get people to figure out what your content is all about. It is really good for SEO. People love it. But you do also want that body text underneath. I was just talking to someone about the ways that AI is changing SEO, right? So there's featured snippets. Thank you, Marie. Marie put it in the chat. It is featured snippets. Thank you. So yeah, so those bigger pieces of those blocks of content underneath your subheadings. That's right. I was talking about AI. ChatGPT, a lot of people are using ChatGPT as a search engine, which is definitely going to be interesting to see how that changes the world of SEO. I think it's interesting, like lots of people are talking about it as a content generator, which, yeah, that's cool. But people are going to ChatGPT and asking it questions and using the information that it provides. So that we might have to change how we create content to make ChatGPT happy rather than making Google happy. So that's going to be interesting. So if that happens, we might see the listicles kind of fade because ChatGPT relies on more of that block content. So this is another one you can take with a grain of salt. We're going to have to see. Right now, I still recommend using lists whenever you can, and ChatGPT absolutely provides lists. I've seen it do it. So we're going to have to see where we end up on this one. Make it original. Google loves original content. So you can absolutely take ideas from other people. If a competitor is covering a particular topic that you know a lot about, absolutely feel free to go ahead and cover that topic. But certainly don't copy and paste what they said, because that's rude and also not great for your SEO. And it's not great marketing either, because now you just sound like them instead of sounding unique and like your own brand. And you're going to attract their clients rather than your ideal clients. So not a great idea to copy and paste. You also don't really want to regurgitate. You always want to have your own perspective on whatever topic it is that you're covering. You can absolutely do your research, and you should do your research to make sure you're covering everything there is to cover, but have your own take on it. So you're not just regurgitating, because that's what ChatGPT does. And if that's all you're doing, then you can just use ChatGPT to do that, and you'll end up sounding like everyone else on the internet. And then there's nothing, A, that's not great for Google. Google's not going to love that content, and B, it's not going to be as effective. People are not going to understand what it is about you that sets you apart from everyone else in your field doing what you do. Link building. This is not so much about creating the content, but this is super important for SEO. And again, I have a whole other presentation on how to get those backlinks. So link building is when you try to get other websites to put a link in their content that leads to your website. That is an external backlink. An internal backlink is when you have a link from, let's say, one blog post on your website to a different web post, a different blog post on your website, or a different web page on your website. That is an internal link because it's within your own website. Both of those are great for Google. That helps you build credibility, because if someone else is linking to your content, that tells Google that that website is using you as a resource. It trusts your judgment. So that makes you look really good, because it's yourself saying how awesome you are versus someone else saying, no, this person really knows what they're talking about here. You should check them out. So work links into your content, not as much as you can when it makes sense to do so. Just make sure you have a healthy balance of internal and external links in your content. So you do want to lead people to other pieces of content on your website. You are also going to want to lead people to other pieces of content on other websites. That helps establish you as a resource. You might not have all the answers, but you know where to find the answers. And it's a great way to build reciprocity, because if you have someone where you are linking to their website, then when it makes sense for them to link to your website, they're going to be more likely to do that. So link building, including those links in your content, and actively asking for people to link to your content on your website, super helpful. All right, going to talk a little bit about the elephant in the room here, which is AI. And you can see I labeled the elephant AI. Like I said, listicles might might be going away eventually. And certainly the meta descriptions might become less important if more and more people are using tools like ChatGPT as a search engine. I think that's really interesting just because that's not what ChatGPT was intended for. But that's, you give people a tool and they're going to use it the way they're going to use it. So that is something that we all need to keep in mind when it comes to creating content. Um, Google initially said that they would downgrade content that was written by AI generators. But then Google was also investing heavily in AI generation. So I think they kind of backpedaled on that a little bit. And they also use AI heavily in their algorithms. So there's a lot of AI going on. I do personally, like I said, if you're just taking what ChatGPT creates for you or one of those other AI generated tools, the way they work is just by gathering content elsewhere on the internet and regurgitating it for you. I love using that as a starting point, as an inspiration point, a way to kind of get me over the hump, over that writer's block, if that's something that I'm struggling with. But I'm never going to just copy and paste what ChatGPT gives me. Usually I'll just use it as inspiration. Occasionally I might take the text and rework it and edit it so that, again, it's got more of my perspective, my voice. It sounds like something that came from me rather than something that came from a computer. And obviously we all know that you can't trust everything you find on Google, but the same is especially true of ChatGPT, because again, it's just taking a bunch of information and regurgitating it for you. Sometimes that information is accurate, sometimes not so much. And because there is no link available, you're not always going to be able to check the work, right? Like, where did you find this information? I know I do that when I search something on Google. If I'm not 100%, if I don't buy into it, I'm going to check the resource. Like, okay, who is this that's writing this? You don't have that ability with ChatGPT. So obviously, if you're using it to create your own content, you should be an expert in your own industry. You should know whether or not it's correct or incorrect. When I first started playing around with ChatGPT, I asked it a question about white papers versus blog posts, and it gave me an incorrect answer. And I was like, this is why I don't rely on these tools. So there is a way to use them. They can be super helpful. But as far as using them to create content, whole bunch of reasons that I recommend against that. Right. We all saw what happened when when Google released Bard and they did not double check Bard's work and it was a shit show. So that is something to keep in mind as well, that it's not always super accurate. Check its work. And when it comes to ChatGPT, especially the free version, is only updated from like, I think 2021 is when it's taking information from. So anything that has happened in the past, 2 or 3 years, it doesn't know anything about that. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. I think if you pay for ChatGPT 4, which you do have to pay for, that's not free. If you pay for that, then it's a little bit more recent. But again, you're still going to have that issue of the information that it's using is often outdated. So I'm not saying don't use AI. I'm not going to give that blanket statement. Just you can get ChatGPT 4 free with Bing's search engine, according to Marie. I did not know that. That makes sense though, since they're working with Microsoft. So good to know. All right. So that is my little PSA. Oh, and then Marie put it in the chat. It is bing.com/new. Is that all of it? Want to make sure I'm saying all of it. Yeah. For those of you who can't see the chat. Oh, because Marie sent that to me directly. Okay, cool. All right. I do want to talk a little bit about the fact that I do this professionally. So rather than taking my word for it, I do want to get some of that social proof by showing you what some of my clients have said about me. This is from James Brewer, who is a financial planner. He said, I consider Alice one of my best investments ever because I see her command of both English and SEO. You don't usually see those two together. And that is something that every time someone asks, what sets you apart? That's something that I say is that it's definitely the combination of knowing how to write, knowing how to craft a good story, and also knowing what makes Google happy, because those are two different things, and it's always a balancing act between making good content and making content Google likes. But that is a tightrope I have walked quite a bit and have gotten very familiar with. Elise Stein of Chuba Creative says working with Allison was a breeze. Creating blog posts felt like a daunting chore to me, and she was able to take that off my plate and run with it completely. She thoroughly did her research and provided fresh content that was relevant to our field and audience. In addition to being a skilled writer, Allison is a lovely individual to collaborate with. She's kind, considerate, timely, and attentive. I felt well cared for as a client and highly recommend her services. And last but certainly not least, my very favorite testimonial. I was talking to a client just on the phone once. This is Peter Lubin, who's a business attorney. And he said, I don't know how you make such boring content sound so lively. And I said, I am using that in all of my marketing content because that is an awesome testimonial. And then last but not least, this is just the beginning. So this is the QR code to schedule a meeting with me if you are interested in what I had to say here, if you want to have a conversation about furthering this. Oh, thank you, Marie. Marie says she has seen me do fabulous work. Awesome. Thanks, Marie. So yeah, if you want to have a conversation with me, that QR code right there is a way that will take you straight to the link to schedule a meeting with me. So this is it. This is my presentation, and I will open it up for questions at this point. Don't all jump up at once.
I'm reading through my notes. I'm gonna come up with something.
All right, Marie in the chat says, how would you maximize older articles for future use to get more mileage out of them? So that is what I like to call evergreen content, which means it's a topic that never gets old. And I actually just did this because I went out of town for a long weekend this past weekend. So I didn't have time to write a blog post. So I went through my existing blog posts and found one that was evergreen. So it was still relevant, still content that I stand behind. And I made sure that it was still getting traffic. So I look at my Google Analytics and see what pages, what posts have people been looking at the most. And I made sure that this older article, it was almost exactly a year old, actually. I make sure it's at least a year old before I republish it. You can take that post, unpublish it, don't just copy and paste, because if you do that, you've got duplicate content. But you can unpublish it and then republish it with the new date. Again, I always make sure that it still has traffic going to it because that indicates that there is still interest in this topic. And then by republishing it with that new publication date, Google treats it just like brand new content. So you don't have to worry about that. It's not going to think it's duplicate content. It's not going to go, you wrote about this already. It's going to be like, oh, you've got a new blog post up today. Cool. You can put a little disclaimer at the top saying this was originally published on this date and we edited it and republished it for you here. That's always an option. Again, keywords, I would recommend for those of you who do keyword research, I would recommend redoing the keyword research for that piece of content because that can change, especially over the course of a year. People might have lost interest in that topic. Maybe they're not searching it as much. Maybe other people have caught on and they're all creating content using that keyword, and maybe that keyword has gotten more competitive. So those are all things to consider. Maybe there are new keywords, new things to talk about. Always at least look through the content that you've written to make sure that it's still relevant. How often do you think they need to publish new content at a minimum? Oh, and if an entrepreneur wanted to start a blog, how long do you think it would take to actually gain some traffic to build up following? Okay. It's taking a while for Google. I'd give it at least a few months to especially if you're just starting a blog, for Google to really scan all your content, categorize it, index it, all that good stuff. There's again, Google is using robots, but there's a ton of content out there. So give Google a little bit of time to go through it all, figure out where you rank and what to rank you for. So give it a while, especially if you're just starting out. It's going to take a while to build up and be consistent. I don't think how often you publish is as important as making sure you publish consistently. So if you say once a month, I would say at the very least once a month is the bare minimum. So if you choose once a month, make sure you are publishing every month. If you choose twice a month, make sure you are publishing every other week. And again, make it consistent. So don't publish, one post on the first of the week and one post on the second week of the month, and then not publish again until the next month. You want to space it out as evenly as you can. Ideally, every other week, especially if you're writing that longer, more in-depth content, every other week is really going to is a good way to strike that balance between making sure that you're publishing frequently enough, but also publishing content that's high quality and answers everyone's questions and is going to make Google happy. You are welcome, Marie. And for Sarah or anyone else, if you're going through your notes and you find out like an hour or two later, or a day or two, or a week or two later that you still have questions, you know how to get a hold of me. You can always reach out to me. You all have my email address at this point, so don't think that you have to ask a question right now. All right. Well, I am going to go ahead and end the recording. So thank you for those of you watching the recording. And again, thank you to those of you who attended. Look forward to seeing you on LinkedIn, on my website, here on Zoom again. Oh, thank you for the clap, Joe. I appreciate it. All right. Have a great week and happy blogging, everyone.